Welcome to Wine Soundtrack International. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Alison Levine, and today I'm with Adriaan Badenhorst from AA Badenhorst in South Africa. And I hope I pronounced that properly, Adi.
Yeah, no, that wasn't bad. It's your AA Badenhorst. So it's a German surname.
And tell us, where are you located in South Africa? And tell us a little bit about your winery.
I'm located in the Swartland, which is, if you look at Cape Town as a reference point, because Cape Town is obviously quite well known, we're 70 kilometers northwest of Cape Town. It's on the west coast.
Okay.
And the appellation is called the Swartland, and it's a vast appellation.
And so are you near the sea or more in high altitude?
We're about 25 miles from the sea. And we're a little bit of altitude, like 1,000 feet above sea level. Mm-hmm. That's where our farm is situated.
And how many acres do you have? Or hectares?
So hectares, we've got 100 hectares of land. And on that, we've got 45 hectares of very old vineyards planted from 1951 up until 1978. A few vineyards were planted in the early 2000s. And we've got some young vineyards planted now that are 9 hectares in extent that are 2-3 years old.
And what are the various varieties that you have planted? Or what are the wines you're making, I should say, from these vines?
I don't know, man. We started out just to make 2 wines, a white and a red. And then even when we started doing that, I thought, we must just make one, just put them all together. So we started out making an appellation white and red. Just to give it a really, really good, I don't know, it's so difficult. You make wine and winemakers talk a lot of bullshit about terroir and how they farm and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they're all human beings and they make heavy decisions that affect the wines. When to pick, when to plant, how to ferment, how to extract, age on lees, all those kind of things. So we just wanted to make a wine, a white and a red, that I suppose in a way it took away a lot of those decisions. So we do a white blend of 11 or 12 different grapes. We pick them over 2 days, ferment them together, and that's the wine. Red's the same thing. 5 different varietals from 7 vineyards, picked together on the same day, fermented together, and so there's one decision to pick, which is the major decision, and the next decision is when to bottle. And that, I think, is probably, there's many ways, I suppose, you could argue how to make a wine, authentic wine, but for us, that is the most authentic representation of that, of this area.
And can you run through what the grapes are that are planted, just quickly, or a sense of...
No, I can. So just to give you a sense of the place, it's quite dry where we are. We've had really low years of moisture. We're talking 250 mils of rain for the last couple of years, down from our long-term average of 480. So it's been extremely dry. The landscape, it looks, for those listeners that are maybe more familiar with, looks more like a lot like the Roussillon, where we are. Granite outcrops. They've got garrigue. We've got a vegetation they call fynbos, which is incredible. So on our mountain, the Paardeberg, there's 1,288 different species just on the small mountain. Incredibly diverse. So it's these granite outcrops. The hills are up to 800 to 900 meters high, and we are 300 meters. So there's the skies are open. Everything is planted on goblet, planted on contour. We've got some extreme vineyards quite high up. We've got vineyards down in the bottom with the deep, deep granitic sands. And we're planting, obviously, Chenin Blanc. It's a grape that's been planted in the Paardeberg since the early 1700s. But what also does really well in the Swartland is Grenache Blanc, Grenache Gris, Marsanne, Roussanne to a lesser extent, but we still use a little bit. We've got Semillon Blanc, Semillon Gris. Verdelho is an amazing grape. We've got quite a lot of Colombar as well. In the old days, Colombar was used for distillation, but it adds really a nice acidity to the wine. Verdelho as well, we know that it's got an amazing acidity, beautiful aromatics. And the other grapes are, we've got a little bit of Chardonnay that we've planted, that was in the farm. What else is there? I think that's maybe 10 or 12 different grapes. I'm not sure. And of course, Viognier. There's a bit of Viognier as well. And on the red side, what does really well on our property is Cinsault, Grenache, Tinta Barroca, Shiraz as well. So we like this sort of Portuguese, Southern Rhone kind of varieties do really well where we are.
And with the 2 wines that you're making, what's your total case production?
It's probably 12,000 bottles of each. But then we make some single vineyard wines as well. So I've been on the property for 10 years. So my previous job, I got fired. I was a winemaker at like a really fancy place, and I got fired. I was being a bit of a dick. I made like a really bad rosé, or like an average rosé, and I got fired. And so I was living with my son, 12 months older than my wife. My wife was very angry with me at that stage. But we lived with friends of ours in their garage for a while we sort of made a few deals. And my cousin and I bought this farm together, and that's how we started. And now, 10 years later, after working with these vineyards for 10 years, now we've identified and we know these amazing Chenin vineyards that have just got the unique expression of where they're grown. There are subtle differences in the beginning, but as the wines age, those differences become more amplified, which is really interesting. We've got 5 different Chenin Blancs, single vineyard Chenin Blancs. We do a Palomino, single vineyard Palomino, only 600. But so they're small productions, 1,000 bottles, some are 600 bottles. We do a Grenache and a Cinsault on their own as well. 2 Cinsauts, in fact. Very, very small things just to capture a vineyard in a way.
And are the wines available throughout South Africa, outside of South Africa?
Yes, the wines are available all through South Africa, of course. It's important for us to be strong in South Africa and sell a lot of wine in South Africa because we are South African and, we don't have to fly all over the world to sell it. And we sell a lot of wine in America, in the United States, and obviously in Canada as well, particularly Quebec. Big market for our wines, like funny enough, is a country called Norway, Sweden, Denmark, those countries. Obviously Germany, England, of course. That's where all the wines of the world end up in England. A little bit in Germany, Australia as well, and New Zealand.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, so we have to be.
Yes.
We've got wine to sell. So it's important to put wine in all of these countries.
So, what is your first memory relevant to wine?
My first, I've got a lot of wine memories, a lot of them. First one was probably a bottle of Bordeaux. My father had a really nice collection of wine. My grandfather worked on a farm called Groot Constantia, which is the original wine farm in South Africa. He worked there for almost 50 years. My father was born on the farm, so I grew up there amongst the vineyards and et cetera, et cetera. But my father had quite a nice wine collection. And it was underneath an old house, or like a Cape Dutch, underneath a house. It was where it used to be the slave quarters. And he had this amazing winery, a wine cellar. Mm-hmm. And the wine was a Petrus. It was a 78.
This is your first wine memory.
Yeah, Petrus, and it was 78, and I'll never forget. It was a Petrus 78 and a Kalmoesfontein 78. And that was in 1982 that they drank these wines. I was 10 years old. That's my first wines that I remember the name and the label. So whenever I see, obviously, Petrus one doesn't really buy it anymore to drink it every night. It's ridiculously expensive. But Kalmoesfontein, one can still buy every now and then, and I just love that, the heart and the label and the story behind it. And Santa Steph, it's always been, for me, wines that are quite different to the rest of Bordeaux, a little bit rustic, and so that's what I like. I've always liked those wines. So that's my first memory.
And of all the wines you've had to taste, and obviously you started out on a very, very good note at 10 years old, what would you say is one of the most memorable wines you've drunk, and what was that occasion? This was
actually in 1987, and this was on the farm Buitenverwachting. And the winemaker there, a guy called Jean Daneel, had made a Noble 8 harvest from Rhine Riesling, and he had a tank of this 1,500 litre tank, stainless steel tank. And I just knew my way into the winery, and I used to go and taste this tank every day after school. It was amazing. It was like nectar for me. 1987 Buitenverwachting Noblesse. I've still got a few bottles of that.
And how does it taste today?
No, I haven't tasted it for a long time. I'm just keeping the rest for my children.
Oh.
No, so yeah, no, I've been exposed to that kind of thing, obviously. But I mean, wine is such an emotive thing. When I think about the noblesse, I go back to those days on that farm. It's an amazing thing what wine can do. It can take you away, just the smells and the sights and such a visceral kind of thing,
Absolutely. You've had the opportunity to travel around the world and taste different wines. Would you say that there's one culture that drinks the best in terms of quality?
It's a difficult, not a difficult question, difficult for me to answer. I think, I've obviously traveled in France, Italy, Australia, South Africa. I don't know. It's a very difficult thing. I think drinking great wines is not often, we've got this romantic idea that you go to a village in Italy and you sit there at the corner cafe owned by Roberto and he serves this amazing Abruzzo, Chianti, or whatever. It's not necessarily the great wines. It's like the combination of the place and the food that makes it so amazing. But I think if you're talking like quality wines and diversity, you've got to go to a place like London, America, Quebec, Norway. You've got to go to the centers of the world where these wines are being imported and the sommeliers are excited about the wines and where there's a fantastic cuisine developing. I love the food and wine combinations in Norway. I think they're drinking amazing wines, and the wines are available throughout, and quite a diverse range of wines. Obviously, I don't know New York that well. London, we know it's a fantastic wine culture, and the food is, of course, catching up in leaps and bounds. I mean, there's an amazing food and eating culture in London these days. I mean, it's impossible to go there and spend a week and you just have a little taste of what's going on there. And South Africa's catching up as well now. We've always been proudly South African. And in South Africa, our cuisine is like far ahead of what the people are drinking in those restaurants. The lists are quite strong. Quite limited, but the food in the top restaurants is next level, really world class.
So wine follows.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. And with the quality of wines that are coming out of South Africa, it's only natural that will show up on the wine list.
No, of course, because there's tremendous excitement at the moment in South Africa.
So if we were to go into your cellar, aside from some of the sweet wines that you're holding on for your kids, what else might we find in there?
I don't know. You'll find when you walk into my winery, on your left, underneath the staircase, there's Miss June 1972. Below Miss June 1972 centerfold, there'll be a really decent turntable that'll be playing some dodgy rock from the 70s. We like to listen to Audience, House on the Hill, probably the greatest rock album ever released. Underneath the turntable, there's a very good coffee machine. And that's our most expensive winery equipment, is our coffee machine. And then the rest of the winery is just filled with wooden vats and concrete tanks.
What about in your home, in your cellar, refrigerator, under the bed? I don't know.
I've got a nice wine collection, but I keep it like completely off the farm because otherwise I'll drink it all.
Well, what would we find in there? And is there anything you're drinking currently from there, or it's locked up and being kept?
No, it's all locked up. I mean, we like to buy a lot of Burgundy every year. We bought some serious ports. I love, obviously, German Riesling, but, the wines we buy now are a little bit too young, but at the moment, if I had to open my fridge now, you'd probably find some half-decent sherry in the fridge. You'll find one of our wines as well, a Secateurs Red Blend, Cinsault-based. Drink a lot of that. In the pantry, in that fridge, there's a wide range of wines. Anything from Musar to my neighbor's wine. I drink a lot of Sebastian's wines. Sebastian Beaumont's fantastic wines out of Bot River. Obviously, Ibn Sadi. We're quite spoiled because I've got neighbors and friends that make great wines, and we do a lot of wine swaps. You'll find some old Bordeaux as well. I think people like to knock Bordeaux, but I fucking love old Bordeaux. The wines that are made long before the fortune and the fame. Obviously, stuff from the Rhone, in particular Graillot and Guénon, my favorite producers there. Shit, what else? No, we drink quite a bit of Australian stuff from South Australia.
You have a very diverse cellar.
From Adelaide Hills, there's a guy there called Terrace Cote who makes amazing wines. So I drink a lot of Terrace's stuff. Yeah, I don't know. just like a various stuff, you know.
Yeah. Do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
No, that's why we blend the stuff, you know. Obviously, I mean, I just love, probably unequivocally, the greatest grape would be like Chardonnay. It's just fucking amazing where it's grown in Burgundy. That is the perfect grape for me there. But yeah, we like to blend stuff.
Yeah.
But Chardonnay would probably be unequivocally the world's greatest grape. Sorry, my voice is finished.
It's okay. We'll keep going. What do you think about wine critics and scores?
I don't know. I mean, I like wine critics. I find them really interesting and nice people. And I think they do a good job. Wine scores, I don't know. I haven't really, none of our wines have really scored highly. So it's not a big problem for me. I think my highest score is like 75, you know. I'm still trying to break 80, whatever that means. No, I don't know. I don't pay much attention to it. You know, I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people, you know, of course it's, you know, personally, I don't really mind too much about scores, but I understand that if people are selling my wine and they're in a wine shop and they've got a category there like $25 wines of 90 plus points. It's just it helps to sell the wines, I suppose. But we try not to make our wines too shit. I mean, we try and get them, get some kind of scores, but it's never a thing we discuss or think about ever.
Yeah. So you were saying you have a really diverse selection of wines that you drink in at home. But if it really came down to it, red, white, or rosé?
Like where I am at the moment in South Africa. Variety or just the color?
For drinking, as a consumer?
No, red.
Red, okay. Still or sparkling?
No, still.
Simple.
Cinsault. No, I drink Cinsault or Grenache.
And how do you approach with food and wine pairing? Do you look at something particular?
I knew you were going to ask me that because, I mean, you know, the thing is, I mean, we used to eat out quite a lot in Cape Town and go to these amazing restaurants and taste these, you know, tasting menus of 20 courses, go to the Fat Duck, go to fucking Melbourne, you know, do that kind of stuff. I can't do it anymore. We, you know, at my house, we eat like really, really simply now. We eat a lot of venison.
And Grenache is perfect.
A lot of venison and vegetables. There'll be some kind of venison and green food, like, but just the vegetables, like the pure, just with a bit of salt and pepper and butter. Nothing else. No sauces, no jus, nothing like that. So when people often say this, like, so they'll taste for example, we make like a Palomino, for example, it's called Salt of the Earth. We only make 650 bottles of it. And it's called Salt of the Earth booze. It has got that saline character. So naturally, that thing, it really goes well with. It's amazing with oysters. It's really incredible with oysters. And our family white blend, a blend of 10, 12 different grapes. It's the most amazing wine with sushi, for example, which I never knew. You know, I never knew that. I thought, but I don't know. So I think the more complex the wines are, and the more interesting the food is, there are a lot more meeting points there are between the two. But we make an amazing breakfast wine, so that goes well with bride sausage, barbecued sausage, and eggs. And it's a muscat, but it's a dry muscat fermented on skins. That thing is amazing breakfast wine. Goes really well with eggs Benedict as well, and a hollandaise sauce. That is the wine I know the best pairing for. The rest, I don't know, red, white.
If you're starting to drink at breakfast, who cares what you're pairing the rest of the day?
No. We meet, Ibn Saadi and myself, We've got a standing sort of arrangement. So we meet every 2 weeks at 5 o'clock in the morning. We light a fire, either up at my place in the mountain or at his place. We light a fire, braai some sausage, drink a bottle of wine, normally a Burgundy or something from the Jura, some light red wine, and some sausage and eggs in the pan, a bit of toast. And that's how we start the day.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great way to start. And those, I don't know, any wine that you drink at 5 o'clock in the morning around a fire is fucking amazing. It really is. Those are always the best food pairings for me. I mean, we drank the other day. Yeah, it was a wine from the Jura, from Lucien Aviette. Fantastic. 2013, I think it was a Cuvée Geologiques. I can't remember, but it was just amazing. With sausage and egg. Best times, man.
Wine Soundtrack International, the voice of wine producers from around the world.
So what do you think that a non-drinker, someone who hasn't tasted your wines, is missing out on? What are you trying to say with your wines?
No, they're not missing out on anything.
No?
If they haven't tasted them, they're not missing out on anything. We just make wine. If you taste it, no, they're not missing out on a single thing.
Not a single
thing. Not a single thing. No, I'm the last thing I want to argue with anybody is taste. Mm. I'm not going to say, you have to taste this. It's so amazing. No, if you're meant to experience the wine at some stage, you will, but you're certainly not missing out on anything. You're probably actually saving yourself. You're probably saving yourself from a lot of
Let's not entice anyone to try your wine.
Bodily damage, So stay away from them,
So you're really focused on blends and working with a diverse amount of varieties. How much do you think vintage plays a part? How much variation do you see from year to year? I know South Africa is a pretty consistent climate relative to other places.
Yeah, we've got an amazing ability to ripen grapes. The big influences on vintage, and there's vintage variation, is in the last couple of years for us has been the drought. So the water table is really low. Wind has got a major influence on obviously the crop. We get a lot of wind in October, November, and that's during flowering and set. So that can determine, how many grapes are going to, it's going to determine the crop for the coming season. And if you have good flowering with little wind, you've set quite a nice crop. But obviously a lot of wind, there's no crop, and it affects how the vine grows and how it ripens, the big crop or the small crop. And of course, temperature. Temperature is very, very important. So we, in the good vintages, in the Swartland, when we say it's a good vintage, we say it's been sort of quite cool ripening from middle of December till the middle of February. If it's sort of coolish weather, that's for us is a great indicator because it gives the grapes an extra few days of hang time. Extra few days if we have a lot of heat and drought early on, that brings on causes a lot of stress. You'll have small berries, very tiny berries, but people often think, tight berry, small berries, good flavor. Mm-hmm. But it's what causes those berries to be so small that, so why the berries underwent a tremendous amount of stress, for example. So it's not necessarily a good thing. You didn't get complete flavor development. Mm-hmm. But there are big differences. The 18 vintage for us was a very, very difficult vintage. Very low yields, very hot, very dry. We made some nice wines, and but as a winemaker, your responsibility is just to bottle that vintage as honestly as possible and put it into bottle. Mm-hmm. You don't preserve that thing and have a look at it in 10 years' time and say, fuck, that was 18 or this was 16 or 17 or whatever. But there is a lot of variation. But we don't, I see a lot of the French, they've just had terrible hail now in Savoie. But the French like to moan about weather the whole time as well, Ale, this frost, this fuck, that kind of thing. South Africans, we don't really moan about that kind of stuff. We just need a little bit of water to, if we have a little bit of water, then we're fine. Then the vintages will normally look quite nice.
Do you have any traditions that you do at the beginning of harvest as a winery or as a family, aside from your 5 a.m. every other week drinking?
I don't think so. We just do a lot of morning braais. We braai a lot in the morning. But that's, the start of harvest is end of January. So you've just come back from holiday, for example. You might have spent a bit of time on the coast. My children are being off to school and it's the start of the new year. So things are quite hectic. And then the harvest is upon us. But we do have a fantastic harvest party at the end of harvest. 25th of March, around about there, last week in March, we have a fantastic party. Sort of 150 people, mostly farmers from the area, just to celebrate the harvest and give thanks. Because by that time, most of the guys are finished.
A way to take a deep breath.
Exactly.
So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a game ranger.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a game ranger. I wanted to drive around in the bush, like with a rifle on the dashboard.
So what happened?
I went to school, and then I wanted to be a teacher, and then I wanted to farm, and that's how I ended up. So after university, after school, I went to university and agricultural college, and did some winemaking courses and soils, that winemaking stuff. And then I traveled a little bit, and then I got a job. Made wine,
and then you got fired and started your own winery.
Yeah, I got that firing part is quite tough. And then we started my own wine with my cousin. So my cousin, so I phoned him. I said to him, "Listen, Hein." So he's a little bit older than me. Hein's probably 5 or 6 years older than me, but he's got like a bit of cash and stuff. I had no cash. I had like $400 in my pocket, and I was living off my bank loan. It's like when you pay back your loan with your loan, then you know you're pretty fucked. And so I convinced him to buy the farm. And I said I'd go 50-50. And he had a look at the farm and said, "Geez, what are you going to do?" It was completely dilapidated, man. The old winery had last been used in the 1930s. But still intact, but lost. So there's no cooling system, there's no light, no electricity. And so he said, "Geez, what do I said, no, man, this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy together, you and I, 50-50. We're going to start making wine and selling wine." He said, "Fantastic." He's in. So when he came to sign, I said, "By the way, I don't have the other 50%. He says, "Yeah, I thought so." So he lent me the money. So that's how we started our farm. Just
amazing.
And we bought the farm next door now, and it's going nice. It's my brother and his wife are working on the farm as well. Obviously, my wife is involved in day-to-day running of the farm. My mother is around there as well.
Do you ever?
My brother-in-law as well.
Do you ever get free time? And if so, what do you do with it?
Yeah, look, free time is we do probably weekends, but weekends. You're so tired from running around in the week, 2 kids at school. It's a 25-mile drive to school. They're going to be, there's no buses or anything. So they're going to be picked up and dropped off in sport and stuff. So, and then sport on Saturdays for the children, rugby and hockey and netball and that kind of stuff. So we've only got Sunday off, and then Sunday we just fucking collapse, and then Monday starts again. But if we do take time off, we go to the West Coast. My wife's father's got an amazing house there. We spend time on the West Coast, just relaxing, surfing, fishing, just chilling down at the beach, drinking really nice wines. That's what we like to do. And when I go back to South Africa in 2 weeks' time, now we're going to the Kruger National Park to see drive around the park, try not to be eaten by lions or trampled by elephant. That's the name of the game there. So we're going to do that.
What would you say is the best piece of advice you ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received? I'm trying to think who it was and what it would have known. The best piece of advice? Yeah, just from my mother. You always have a sense of humor and be nice. And be honest, nice and honest, and have a sense of humor. There's been no advice about how to buy this, life is too short, that kind of stuff. It's just... And by being that is just to live in the moment, and I've always taken just to live in the moment and appreciate exactly what's happening around you. Mm-hmm. And you see it more and more with your kids. You realize how fucking fallible you are and how quickly time goes.
If you could offer some advice to our listeners, what piece of advice would you like to share with them?
Like from a viticultural point of view.
Sure. Why not? That's your expertise.
Viticulture.
Or a wine drinking or a wine life.
No, I would say, what I do a lot is just buy some wine that you can drink with your children or your mother or your father. And if you've got great wine in your cellar, don't wait to drink it until it's too late. Mm-hmm. Drink good wine, buy the good wine, and drink it now with friends.
So you were talking about how you started your winery. What would you say in your work is your proudest achievement to date? Is it starting that winery and how you built it, or is there something else that stands out?
No, I don't know. It was just what we had to do. So it's not I don't reflect and feel like smug about it because it's a work in progress, but no, we haven't got any achievements to really. I mean, the biggest achievement, I think, is that we employ more people now and we make a difference like that. I mean, I don't really care about the land and stuff, but I care about the land. I fucking love and I love to farm and we love to plant grapes and make wine, etc. But I mean, the bigger thing is that we employ more people now. Yeah, so we employ 24 people. And, on average, each of the guys that works for me has got 6 dependents. So it's like a huge pyramid of responsibility. And that's nice.
That is beautiful.
That's a nice thing. I'm not proud of fucking like buildings or wines that we've made or that kind of stuff. Just the fact that we employ a lot of people, and in a country like South Africa, we've got an unemployment rate of 26%, which is crazy. So yeah, that's what we want to just be productive. My uncle always used to say to me, "Listen, you've got land, just be productive."
Complete the sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
I don't know, like a fly without a fish on it.
A fishing term, of course.
Yeah, of course. yeah, a fishing term, of course.
That's an original one. Okay. So, if there was one person in this world, living or deceased, who you would want to share a bottle of your wine with, who might that be?
St. Paul, I think.
Okay.
St. Paul or Jan Smuts. No, he was pretty hardcore. Probably quite scary having wine with him and sharing a bottle with him. So he'd tell you a story. But the other guy is Jan Smuts, probably one of the greatest South Africans ever produced. Amazing brain. So Jan Smuts used to be the former statesman from South Africa. And Albert Einstein said of Jan Smuts, he's the only human being alive that really understands what I'm talking about. So he's an amazing man. So yeah, Jan Smuts and St. Paul. I think the three of us around here would be quite interesting.
If you, where do you sort of think that we're going in terms of wine production? Do you think that we'll be drinking wine in 300 years, 500 years? And what we'll be drinking? Do you have an idea looking at...
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you think we'll still be drinking wine?
Yeah, man has always been drinking wine. I've been drinking wine for thousands of years. There's no way we're going to stop drinking wine. What the wine will look like in 300 years, I don't think it'll be much different. I think we'll just need to change the way we farm, we produce grapes, things that have become scarce. And wine might become, it might become a luxury thing, like it is becoming in a way. It irritates the shit out of me. It's driven by ego and money. And if you look at Napa and the prices of land, you can't buy a piece of land and farm it and be profitable. It's just about ego and return on ego, which is so funny. It's a dichotomy of the whole essence of wine. Wine is something from the earth. I'm always amazed that people taste my wines here and say, "Oh, the wine's amazing." But I'm saying, listen, man, it's just grapes. Just simple things, grapes, perfect grapes that in a bottle, and it's wine. And people, we are our own worst enemy with that kind of thing, driving prices and scarcity. And we're going to have to relook very carefully. And I think this generation now, we're going to have to make some serious calls in terms of how we drink, how we eat, and how we live. And I don't know, I don't see it changing. Mm-hmm. But I think the wines we're going to drink in 100 years' time, 50 years' time, 200 years' time are going to be very beautiful wines. And they're going to be, what we're trying to do is just express a place and some visceral quality that is beyond the commercial range of wines.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment. But before we end, we're just going to have a little more fun. Just to end on a happy note.
Yes.
So, what 3 wines would you take with you to a deserted island?
Oh, jeez. These questions. Fuck's sakes. It's not going to be anything like Bubbles or Pet Nut.
That's okay.
It's not going to...
It's your deserted island.
It's not going to be that. What I'm going to drink every single day. It's such an impossible question.
Because the vast world of wine out there.
Yeah.
So
it's an impossible question for me. I'm going to give 50 wines that I'll take. Like this guy's wines, for example. Pierre Moray. This stuff is amazing. Just this Bourgogne Blanc. This stuff is stunning. That I can drink bucket loads of.
I won't put the pressure on you. I'll put another piece of pressure on you.
Oh.
You told me that you have a turntable under your stairs
Yes.
and different music that you listen to. You spoke about an album, and music obviously plays a role. There's some correlation between wine to some degree.
I don't know. That's what they say.
That's what they say. So if you were drinking this white Burgundy that we're staring at a bottle of as we speak, what would you want to be listening to, or what does it make you think of?
This is a Sunday just before lunch wine. We'll play, for this we'll drink that, and we'll play a bit of jazz, bit of South African jazz, by Basil Manenberg Coetzee. Manenberg. That's what we'll listen to.
Okay. And
it's 22 minutes long. It's fantastic. It's just enough time to drink the whole bottle.
22 minutes.
22 minutes enough to drink the whole bottle.
And what about, well, you said you drink Grenache every day. What about a nice bottle of Grenache?
Yeah, I love Grenache. I love Grenache because it's because of its clarity and its honestness. It's an honest thing. It's well made. It's a good translation of where it is. It ages beautifully. Yeah, I could drink Grenache as well.
And what would you be listening to?
Oh, with Grenache?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, it depends what time of the day. No, look, the only album... Oh, no, there's so much music as well that we listen to, but like, there are a few great albums. The one is by a guy called Rodriguez, called Cold Fact. The other album is Audience, House on the Hill, greatest rock album ever.
I listened.
Yeah, greatest rock album ever. Oh, fuck, I love a bit of Jimmy Cliff. Love Jimmy Cliff. The Harder They Come, I love that. Put a bit of reggae in there. There's a band called the Congos, Heart of the Congo. That's an amazing album, really roots kind of reggae. Yeah, and then anything from Led Zeppelin, but just like one song, Kashmir, is probably the greatest song ever written by any human being. It's like making wine. I mean, you try and make something that's representative of the terroir, but we just, like any band these days, they all just take bites out of the corpse of Led Zeppelin. They'll never be that good. but it's the same with winemaking. If we get that kind of right, get those flashes of brilliance in the wine, that's a nice thing.
Well, that's wonderful. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And before we go, can you just let people know, can they visit you? Where can they taste your wines? And
so they can, obviously, in South Africa, they can visit me in South Africa. On the website, I think it's aabadenhorst.com. So it's aabadenhorst.com. It's a German descent name. But I've got rid of those German habits through 17 generations of inbreeding. I've got rid of those corrupting German dogmas of precision, neatness, that kind of thing. So they can check that website out. The farm is open. We're normally on the farm from Monday to Friday. Weekends, we're normally not on the farm. Well, we are on the farm, but fuck, we don't like to see people on weekends. So anybody can just send me an email as well at adi@iafrica.com. adi@iafrica.com. Very simple, and I'll normally get back to you. No, like an email or something.
Well, Adi, thank you so much for joining us
today. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great. And I just hope the listeners are still awake. Hey, wake up.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack International. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.